if you please rise with me in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, County Council is in court this morning. He will get back as soon as he can. Commissioner Boyce, do you have a casualty report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Officers down. Law enforcement, we've lost a line of duty, up 1 from 20 to 21. Military deaths up 1 also to 10 so far for 2020. And then the fire administration report for firefighters loss up 2 to 12. Better than 2018 through the first 2 months, but still pretty sad. I want to read something that you referenced, probably a couple months ago on the suicide deaths. And this is just a quick paragraph, Mr. Chair. For the third straight year, police suicides outnumber line of duty deaths. The estimated number of law enforcement officers who died by suicide has outnumbered those who died in line of duty for the third straight year in 2018. I didn't know that, but I found this article yesterday. A newly released study shows Blue Help is a link for officers, because sometimes they don't let on and they don't know that there's help, and they believe there's a stigma with it, and so they ignore help, and you know what can happen after that. A couple of references there and links, but also some additional information, statistics that I was unaware of. 6 of the 21 so far that we've lost for 2020 are female officers. Never would have thought. 6 out of the 21. So Oregon still none for the last 3 years. And one other stat, Mr. Chair, many of those officers are struck by vehicles. Some of them are deliberately struck by vehicles, as you know. So a moment of silence, if we could. I think the board would appreciate that. Thank you, Chair Passion.
All right. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? I have one. We're going to add one more topic to executive session. So it'll be 1926602F, litigation likely to be filed. Anything further? Motion, please.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? JJ, you're on.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, and for another, this is 2 of the last 4 weeks, we have no public comments. We'll read that.
Okay.
We're going to move on to presentations. Emergency Management, Jeremy Dumeyer, our Emergency Management Manager. Morning, sir.
Good morning. So for the record, Jeremy Dumeyer, Curry County Emergency Manager. Before I get started, I should go up there and get the mouse, so I'll need that. All right. So quarterly report, and then also report out on some outstanding work done here in the county. So going back through my notes, the things of importance, in December, had a meeting with the Governor's Tsunami Resiliency Work Group. It was the 3rd and final meeting of that work group. Previous meetings were held in Astoria and in Newport. The last one in December held in Coos Bay. At that meeting, I gave a presentation before Senator Arnie Roebland, Representatives Dave Brock-Smith and Gomberg, in addition to the State Resiliency Officer and staff from the Governor's Office. Basically asked them to consider a standing work group for a tsunami task force in Oregon. I am pleased to announce that that is part of the Governor's Resiliency Package before legislation right now. I continue to work with FEMA regarding the disasters of February and April, DR 4432 and 4452. and also had the board adopt the CARES board, the Curry Amateur Radio Emergency Service Board. The ham operators, we are currently underway planning logistics for the Memorial Weekend jet boat races. We're looking at having about 22 stations, 7 based on land and 15 in boats to relay information for the races. In December, also continued work, pre-award work on the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. DLCD is the partner in that. That work I mentioned is pre-award. They still have not been funded for the plan, so it's on hold as of this moment. January submitted grants to the Office of Emergency Management for the State Homeland Security funding. Grants included for a part-time planner for my office and also for communications equipment. I am on the planning team for the Oregon Prepared Conference in Bend. That has been ongoing since about September. That conference will come up in 3 weeks. I have been nominated for an award amongst the state. We'll see how that goes. This conference includes about 500 people that will be registered for the event from FEMA, the state, Office of Emergency Management, Oregon Health Authority, Department of Defense, non-governmental entities, faith-based organizations, private-public partnerships, and more. And also in January, I did get my amateur radio license, so I am now a licensed operator on the airways. If you hear me, call out Kilo Juliet 7 Lima X-Ray Zulu. That is my call sign. That's part of the work that I've been doing with the volunteers in this area. Obviously, I've had a lot of focus on the CERT program, the Community Emergency Response Team, but also with the amateur radio operators, I've seen a huge need for that work to be done. We have, for instance, in Gold Beach, 43 licensed ham operators that can get on their radios and communicate any needs in emergency traffic as needed. However, there's no club here in Gold Beach, and there's not been any activity on these repeaters for many years, whereas there is an active group in Brookings and there is an active group in Port Orford. So with the help of both Steve and Randy, KA6 SFT and K7AGE, we have reformed a group here in Gold Beach. It is the Gold Beach Amateur Radio Society. We now have 7 members of that club. So again, trying to build up the volunteers because they can be a lifeline in a disaster. One thing of note, in January, planned on attending meetings in Roseburg on the 30th with Commissioner Boyce. That day, my truck broke down for the 3rd time this winter. It has since been in the shop up until, I am pleased to report, up until yesterday. I do have it back in my possession, and it is so far running good. It has broken down 5 times in the past 12 months with 158,000 miles on it, so hopefully it holds up. This past month here, maintain situational awareness on the coronavirus. As you know, there is instances of it south of us in Humboldt County. I've been working with my partners primarily to the south for that situational awareness, along with our hospital coalition partners, to see what steps we need to take, if any. At this point, there are no instances of coronavirus in Oregon, no positive cases, but they are taking necessary steps and precautions. I did attend a G2300 course. It's basically like a ICS 300 for EOC operation, emergency operations centers. A very intensive class. Continue to work on the RSR project with Commissioner Boyce, with Summer Madison, Chief Krieger. We did some project planning with fire facilities for the structures that we place out there on the mill site. Last night, gave a presentation to the Brookings Scouts at the Brookings EOC. Had a lot of kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade youths come in, ask a bunch of questions about the Emergency Operations Center, talk to them about preparedness in a broad sense. Covered a lot of different topics, of course, as you can imagine with kids. So that was quite enjoyable. Today I am heading up to Coos Bay to give a presentation to my public health partners regarding the management and health implications of the Huskanadian landslide. Sunday, I leave on a flight paid for by FEMA to go to Anniston, Alabama, to the Center for Domestic Preparedness. That will enable me, that training I'm taking in Anniston will enable me to teach the ICS courses and deliver those locally. In Southern Oregon, there are very few certified instructors. In fact, that G2300 course I referenced, one of my instructors came all the way from Malheur County in order to put that on. So there's quite the need for it, and I'm looking forward to being able to deliver those classes. That's something we've talked about here before. And then this past weekend, I also put on a community emergency response team class here in Gold Beach at the fairgrounds. I've got some pictures from that training. I was quite pleased with the way this event turned out. We had about 30 people attend the class. When I took over as emergency manager, I asked for how many people in the community were CERT volunteers. I had 6 people raise their hand. In 2 years, I have trained over 200 CERT volunteers. This class, despite being held in Gold Beach, was almost equally distributed between Brookings and Gold Beach as far as the attendees. I had instructors from Coos County, Curry County, Del Norte, and Lane County at this event. We always start off with a little team building exercise. And what was really nice about this class is we actually had not just adults, but we invited youths from ages 12 and up. We had about 8 4-H kids that took this class also. One of the instructors from Lane County talking about disaster psychology there. We cover various topics such as disaster psychology, disaster preparedness, CERT organization and basic ICS, basic disaster medical response, firefighting, fire and fire operations, as well as terrorism. For this class, we always have an exercise after the class. I invited the Port Orford ham radio operators to come down to demonstrate their new communications trailer and also use it in the exercise that we had. I also had ham operators from Gold Beach and Brookings at this event so we can have communications for the exercise. And we had some pretty good actors. My son was a very willing participant, threw himself into the log rolls and blanket carries. So we demonstrated a lot of different things. This is using a blanket as a stretcher. And then there are some other dummies that do get involved. You might recognize the person underneath the table there as yours truly. This is part of our cribbing exercise that we do, basically teaching how to build up a safe structure to be able to remove someone from entrapment. And then we have the exercise. In the exercise, we simulate a light earthquake, a magnitude 6.8 earthquake with people in a building, community building, no power, and just kind of go through what they've learned. We do try to simulate the injuries as best as possible. Which leads me to this unit right here. So this fire pan is something I'm very proud of at this point. It's been an amazing tool. In trainings past, this prop had been a trash can lid, one of those galvanized steel trash can lids with PVC piping in it. You would connect it to a propane burner and fill it full of water, light the bubbles off, and you'd have fire. However, being that it was a galvanized trash can lid, you had almost no room for water on top of the piping, and because it was so malleable, it got to the point where the pipe was fully exposed and was starting to burn off. So I looked into replacing that, and I did have a grant through State Farm for these training supplies. I looked at getting a fire extinguisher training prop. It was going to cost me a minimum of $2,300. And that's without plumbing it. That's just having the pan, the copper piping inside, and then you get the rest of the materials. However,
That's cool.
thanks to some of our county employees, this pan only cost me $200. I'd like to highlight Bob Halcomb at the road department for coming up with the pan. This used to be an old oil pan for changing oils in the tractors, as well as Tad and Chet in the maintenance department. they had the ingenuity and the forward thinking to put this prop together for a grand total of a little more than $200 in supplies versus paying no less than $2,300. And as you can see in this photo here, it worked quite well. In fact, I'm able to use those small little camping propane bottles with it, which is much more effective and efficient than the 5-pound bottles I had been lugging around. So again, a huge thanks to both Bob and then Chet and Tad in the maintenance department. They've all chipped in and done a fantastic job with this fan.
Looks like $200 worth of copper in there.
That's probably all it is $200 in copper. Most of those materials were sourced from stuff we had. So they
Is
were
this
quite
its maiden voyage?
It was the first time we'd use it.
Ah, cool.
So with that, that's my quarterly report. Any questions?
Commissioner Boyce?
Got my hand. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, you mentioned Senator Arnie Roblin, and reminds me, it's just a real disappointment for Curry County. They don't represent Curry County, but Catty McEwen, state representative, you know, in the Oregon legislature anymore, there's no room for moderate Democrats, and I think they have just been a little bit wore out, and they're going to be very hard to replace. So I appreciate that you mentioned Mr. Roblin. He is still staying very dedicated to his responsibilities. Also, it's okay if you tell us about the award that you've not mentioned that yet. So could you fill in the blanks there for us, Mr. Dumeyer?
Well, so I've been nominated by my peers for recognition for the efforts that I put forth in the state. I don't like talking about it necessarily. I did mention it, but we'll see if I get it or not. And if I do get it, I'll bring it back and present it to the board.
Your shoe in.
Commissioner Gold?
I noticed you talked about a lot of volunteers, and April is going to be highlighting volunteers. If you would, please, let me know the number and that sort of thing. I'll send you an email, but it hit me very strongly that you are definitely involved with a lot of volunteers.
We have a lot of volunteers in the community here, and when you brought that up at the previous meeting, my head started to spin around how many different volunteers we have here.
Perfect.
You know, in addition to the CERT program, in addition to the ham radio operators, in addition to Reach Out Worldwide, the list just continues to grow as far as how many people, not only for disaster response, but just in the community. I don't think you have enough spaces, unfortunately. In
Well, my list is growing, but I'm going to email you.
Perfect. And just to let you know, because I do have the training in Anniston, because I do have the conference coming up, and because I am moving back to Gold Beach, I will not be here for the next 3 weeks. There will not be an emergency manager in Curry County for 3 weeks.
Okay.
One other thing, you're on top of the coronavirus.
Correct.
I'm glad to hear, because there was a bunch of stuff out there yesterday about it being pretty close.
Commissioner Boyce?
I have a little presentation on that later. And Mr. Trickett, did you want to fill out a public comment? I didn't know if you understood that or not. But I likewise
On the door.
mentioned, you mentioning the coronavirus and just being prepared and updated. Much appreciated. Also, your work with the counties benefits them.
You can leave it open, sir.
And certainly benefits our citizens. So I just keep that work going. That's part of our responsibility, and I think it's very helpful.
Yeah, the reciprocal nature of my position, it's a huge benefit to be able to work with the other counties, not just Coos County, Josephine County, Douglas County, to our immediate borders in Oregon, but also the work I have with Del Norte County and also with the Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group in California. Being able to work amongst everybody here certainly brings a great benefit to my program.
I'd also like to say I have a radio license, but I do want to be involved in the ham licenses here, so you can sign me up for that as well.
I will keep you informed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we have 5B, Event Center, Caitlin Coleman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
You wouldn't mind pull that top one
yeah,
down
I'm a little
bit?
shorter
There
than
you go.
him. For the record, Caitlin Coleman, I'm the new event center manager. And on there it says that I'm doing a quarterly report, but I've been at the event center for less than a month, or right about a month. And so instead of a quarterly report, I'll just kind of give an update of where we're at and an introduction to myself, if that's all right. I am born and raised in the area, a lot of history with the event center, so I'm really excited to be able to step in and help move the event center forward and bring us into a better place and a great venue for the community. We have kind of stepped off the deep end coming in. We've got brand new office staff, myself and our office manager, both brand new. We do have some resources that we can tap into to help learn from, but we are definitely learning as we go, finally coming up for air a little bit, which has been good. One of the first things I had to tackle was a supplemental budget that I'll be presenting to the commissioners for approval shortly, to move some funds around to cover payroll and some projects that are ongoing. Other than that, I've really had to jump into fair. We came in planning about 3 months late, and so just trying to play catch up with some of that. But we've got some really good plans in place coming up for fair, and there's a lot of excitement building around what's going to happen. And I'm excited to see how it goes and see the reactions from the community. We've got some fun things planned, such as a dunk tank, which don't think I won't be coming to you guys. But also some throwback activities to kind of bring the nostalgia back to fair and get people involved instead of just walking through and seeing what's there and then walking back out. We want to have people want to be there and want to stay and want to hang out and be involved in the activities going on. So we've got cook-offs and three-legged races and things like that all planned. Some great activities coming up for the younger kids that haven't been available in the past. So those are all going really well. And then outside of fair, we've got the event coming up this weekend with Chrissy Cooper and Coastal Legends. We're excited to see how that all comes together and become a great asset for the event, for the community and kids and things like that. We've got the new roof going on Dosha in August. That we are going to be reviewing bids and making our choices at the beginning of the next month in March, so that process can get started and then completed. We're starting to work on pushing forward on the master plan, to making sure that gets developed and finished so that we can access other funds available through the city TLT and then eventually through the county TLTs, as well as hopefully other grants and stuff that we're looking into. I'm starting to look into alternative funding options so that we can make some major capital improvements on the area so that we can utilize what we have and monetize our buildings again so that we can continue to grow and develop and move forward. So overall, that's kind of where we're at. And you guys have any questions? I can't promise I can answer them.
Well, I just want to say, I met you the other day because I'm the liaison for the fairgrounds, but I would like to have a good working relationship
Absolutely.
with you. I'd like to maybe schedule a time that I know Ms. Schmelzer's going to be gone for a while. I'm gone for a few days next week. But when we all get situated in a couple of weeks and you get settled in a little better,
I don't know if
that
we'll ever get settled, but
we could come on over and meet with
Absolutely.
you and kind of start that relationship between
yeah, and
the
I'd
board
love
and the
to
county.
walk the grounds with you guys and show you kind of where I see some of the major things needing to happen first.
That'd be great. Commissioner Boyce?
You met her boys yet? Her two little boys?
I think I met him yesterday.
Yeah,
They
you
were
probably
beating on
heard
my
them.
door.
Perfect. They knew which door to knock on,
Yeah.
right? Ms. Coleman, I'll be glad to volunteer Commissioner
appreciate
Pash for the
that.
dunk tank.
Wonderful. Yeah, I don't think I won't be hitting him up for that.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you again here
Thanks.
publicly, and we look forward to working with
Yes,
you.
me too. Thank you.
Good luck this weekend on that. All right, next we're going to move on to 7, discussion and action items. This is for the final order, Pacifica and Rogue Reef Subdivision. Ms. Crockett, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Becky Crockett, the Curry County Planning Director. I don't have any volunteers. I wish I did.
Yes, you do.
I do?
Planning Commission.
Oh, you're right. and they're good. This is an order for you in regards to the final plat and plan to authorize Phase 1, 18 lots of 33 lots in the planned unit development named Pacifica at Rogue Reef. This is just north of Gold Beach. The planning director administratively approved a planning unit development on July 2nd, 2019 for 33 lots for the subdivision. Then on September 19th, 2019, the Planning Commission voted to approve a preliminary plat and plan to authorize the 33 lots for the Pacifica at Rogue Reef. Then last Thursday, February 20th, 2020, Planning Commission voted to approve Phase 1 of the final plat and plan to authorize 18 lots of the 33 lot subdivision named Pacifica at Rogue Reef. That decision was decided after the applicant showed compliance with all 32 conditions from the preliminary plat for 18 lots, including proof of funds available to complete the infrastructure for 18 lots. That's what's before you today is the order that would approve the plat for 18 of the 33 lots for the Rogue Reef planned unit development and subdivision. Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am. Commissioner Gold?
Is this going to be affordable housing or high-end or?
I'm going to let the applicant answer that question.
Hi.
Sure, let me get right up here. All right. Josh Stout from Gold Beach. To answer your question, Commissioner, the house is just a little background too. So when we came into this process with the mission to kind of serve the local public first. And we put some restrictions on the property that doesn't allow somebody to come in from anywhere really and purchase the property and rent it out at the high rental rates that we're seeing here in Curry County. So what we did is put a restriction on that and offered it out to a reservation process. Throughout that process, with our brokerage, Lynn and her team at Pacific Coastal Real Estate, we noticed that the majority, I'd say greater than 80% of those initial 16 reservations were from the local communities, folks that were renting, high rental rates, looking to purchase a property that was affordable to them. So the pricing, getting to what you're initially after, starts just under $300, and then goes on up depending on size, square footage, where your lot is. All of the lots are going to have an ocean view, and I'd encourage you to come up at any time. You can grab me. I can walk you through the development and show you what's going on. But being a member of the community, resource for the community, it was always on the front of our minds to kind of serve the folks of the community first with something that isn't technically, in the affordable standards, but all of these are within the limits of USDA, FHA, VA lending limits. So, it's a step in the right direction. It's filling a need for the community in housing. So, glad this is in front of everybody, and we're looking forward to the next phase and the next project. And we'll maybe talk together about finding, a property that can meet that affordable standard.
I guess Ocean View doesn't cut it, right?
Commissioner Boyce?
I can get you one.
Commissioner Boyce has a question. Sir?
Director Crockett and Mr. Stout, thank you very much for that work. The Planning Commission, I think, put a lot of time and effort and commitment into that. And Josh, the need for the community is an understatement. So it is just a wonderful thing to see, and part of turning the corner, I think, for the county when it comes to housing. A very, very good start. I think we all agree.
Yeah, and if I may, and I didn't mention it because I'm just not typically accustomed to being up here. It's definitely been an adventure, over the past year and the approval of this process. But I will say, the planning department, Becky and her team, they've been a tremendous amount of help throughout the entire process. The Planning Commission has been very supportive, and except for taking some vegetation of some local pigeons, the community has been extremely supportive. So, I think everybody's excited, and again, thank you, the council, the commissioners, planning department. for all your support and help, Julie. So,
All right. Congratulations.
I just have one comment. One comment about the affordable housing is these houses may not be deemed affordable, but what we have to keep in mind is you now have 18 people moving out of something that is probably affordable. So yes, they're moving into something bigger or more expensive, but you are opening up those other 18 units for affordable housing.
Council?
Oh, you had Commissioner Boyce.
No, these are not under the classification of expensive.
No, they're not.
Yeah, thank you, that's all.
Sorry, thanks, Mr. Chair, if I could. So in your packet, I thought there would be a memo from me in the packet. I didn't see it here, but in the packet on page 4 of this item, there's basically Exhibit 1, and it's the essentially some declarations page of a plat, and it's got additional approvals by the county, and it's got the clerk, the roadmaster, the assessor. There's also, this is what document you will sign, that's on the lower left-hand corner. Essentially, I had these are private streets in this, and so initially we didn't have the roadmaster too involved, but he's also involved in the storm drain and those kind of things. So he wasn't sure if they were completed, and he said usually there's a bond. And the memo I had to the Planning Commission, because it was a condition of the Planning Commission that the utilities be completed. In the alternative, we had a bond, and usually that's like a letter of credit or a cash bond. In this case, they showed proof of funds. And so I reviewed that, and I said, well, we accepted proof of funds in the Brookings Head Start at the Board of Commissioner level. And so I said for the Planning Commission that they could approve the final plat, even if all the public improvements were done, because the developer had submitted a engineer's report and proof of funds evidence, and the Planning Commission agreed to that, and I just wanted to let the board know that. So that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce?
And I just want to extend gratitude to Council Huddle, too. He spent a ton of time on this as well, so thank you.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the final order for Pacifica at Rogue Reef Subdivision.
Mr. Chair, second is great action item.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Congratulations. All right, 7B, Day Wireless, Second Amendment to Site Management Agreement. Mr. Christensen.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good
morning.
Master Christensen. Yeah, I'm here to see if the board or request of the board sign the Second Amendment Agreement for Day Wireless to help manage the towers as follow-up to our workshop last week, where everybody seemed pretty much in agreement, where Day Wireless will start at $125 an hour, amending all our agreements to the ODOT fee schedule. And the next step in the process is we'll be bringing to the board the ODOT fee schedule for board approval, and we'll start billing our customers the ODOT rate. And that Day Wireless will now start billing these customers for us and collecting the fees and distributing our portion of that fee back to the county.
Well, I move that we approve the Day Wireless Second Amendment to Site Management Agreement.
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, Curry County Strategic Plan. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, as the board knows, we started working on the strategic plan last fall, and we have had reviewed a couple drafts. We have the final plan in front of us, and we're just looking for adoption so that we can start using it to prioritize our decisions, and then so the managers can start working on a work plan.
Okay, before we do that, I think we want to have something read into the record from Mr. Barnes.
Okay, it says, Commissioners, where's the money coming from? That was a question we used to hear in this room anytime someone proposed any new spending. We haven't heard it asked in months now. To consider this plan a success requires the hiring of a housing director, a grant writer, a tourism marketer, and communications specialist, and contracting with or hiring a municipal finance specialist. Where's the money coming from? This plan was supposed to contain actions the county could take or could undertake to meet our goals, but appears blind to the simple fact that we don't have the money for all the things we'd like to do. Maybe rich counties can afford all of these new hires, but Curry County certainly can't. At the budget update last month, the BOC was the only department over budget. Without a finance director to hold you in check, your proposed spending continues at a rampant pace. You're looking at adding a conservative $200,000 a year plus benefits right here. Where's the money coming from? If it's true, as I keep hearing from this panel, that public safety is your number one concern, abandon this fallacy of discretionary spending and transfer the salaries you'll save directly to the sheriff's jail and communications budgets. It makes up some for the loss of the owner-absent tax from exempting timber. Forget Julie's grant writer that died but has been resurrected. Same for court's housing director, re-risen. If you really do have the money to spend, spend it on the sheriff's today needs and not on future wishes. Respectfully, David Barnes. I don't think I put the passion into that.
All right.
If I may, or
Commissioner Boyce, go
what's
ahead.
the procedure here?
Go ahead.
Are you open for discussion, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was smiling there because of the reference. No disrespect for Mr. Barnes. I think he's got an awareness of the issues that we've had to deal with and expenditures that have been surprises. We've not been indifferent to the responsibility there. And yes, we're looking at some point to the road fund reserves, and as he asked in his letter several times, where's the money going to come from? I'm not trying to use the surprises, the towers, the courthouse security, the phone system. I said I wouldn't bring up OpenGov again, but that's a big expenditure. So I understand where he's coming from, and a lot of people within the county are, and we're aware of that. We're trying to get a handle on so much of this. As far as the strategic plan goes, I'm positive about it, but because I was on other important details, I apparently missed the window on two subjects, and that was the sudden oak death in particular, and the Curry wildfire prevention plan is not in this strategic plan, and boy, I think it has to be. So somebody needs to help me on how. I'd love to be wrong.
You are wrong.
I had a note from you a month ago that, let's see.
You wanted it
Give me,
added.
Mr. Chair, I'll just read this real quick.
Julie, would you ask them to take that down the hallway, please? While Commissioner Boyce is reading. Thank you.
That's okay. Great. Thank you. Increase investments in emergency preparedness. I just want to read this to the public. Continue work to complete a county resilience plan for disaster preparedness that includes protocol around delegations of authority and orders of succession. Number 2, explore the option of building a North Central Area Emergency Operations Center. Okay. Number 3, partner with agencies to implement the Curry County Community Wildfire Protection Plan and other applicable wildfire plans. Great. Okay. SOD is not in there, but I'm not. That's something we can work with. So I'm not with huge concern on that. Good job on this, and that is an update that I wasn't aware of. I appreciate that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, just so you know, when you did mention that you were interested in that, they did put that in after the last comment
Oh, great.
session.
Okay.
So they did take your comments. and-
Somehow my memo said too late, and I'm going, what? Okay. So great. That's good news. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I just want to say that the strategic plan isn't something that is going to be funded entirely from the general fund. I would assume that there might be grants coming forthwith and other places to get the money. Also, it's not going to happen all at once. So that's my take on the whole thing.
I think the optimal word here is plan. This is a plan that we have set aside for this county to look in a direction for this county to go. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. What the strategic plan does, in my view is to set our minds to the plan that this community has come up with for the county, and when we rule on things or make funding items for things, it should be in line with the future of the strategic plan. So I agree with that part that we're not going to be hiring a bunch of people and doing all this immediately. These are steps that will be taken over time, and I applaud Ms. Schmelzer for her hard work on this as well. Commissioner Boyce?
One more quick comment. As far as housing coordinator, that was never intended. Should we prevail on that, and we are getting closer, everything takes so much time, as we all know. We are getting closer on that. That was never intended to be out of the general budget either. Number two, the grant writer, that's all on a success rate program. I'm missing the proper language there, but so those are not positions that we're trying to fund. And I have in my commissioner's comments, I have a little bit of a report also on grant progress moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
I kind of look at a strategic plan as being an ultimate goal, and kind of like my retirement was. It doesn't happen all at once. You've got to plan a little bit at a time. So that's how I look at it.
All right. So I have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the strategic plan.
Second?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, 7D, on-site wastewater treatment program intergovernmental agreement. Ms. Schmelzer?
So we've discussed before that the state has approached us to see if we wanted to take the septic program in-house. It was at one time in-house, and then it went out to the state. The state has really tried to get out of the residential septic program, and most counties have taken the program over. There's a few up in the northeast corner that have all partnered together. Those counties have partnered together to kind of share resources. And then most of the state, like I said, they've all taken it in-house. Coos County is not taking it in-house, so that leaves Curry, Josephine, and Jackson. And what has happened is I've reviewed the number of permits that we issue, the revenues that could be taken in for this program, and decided it really didn't make sense to have our own person implementing the program. Makes great sense to have it in-house because right now it can take up to 6 weeks to get a septic permit. But by bringing the program in-house, we can get it done in a week sometimes. So I also looked at the idea, since there's not enough work for a full-time person, should we be looking at a part-time person for this position? But there's a lot of education and certification that goes along with it. And my concern is by the time you get them certified, they're going to leave for a full-time job. So I reached out to Josephine County and I asked them, since they too are willing to take the program back in-house, I said, would you be willing to cover Curry County and what would that look like? And so they agreed that they would put one of their inspectors in Cave Junction, and then one day a week they would come over to Curry County and do our inspections. The agreement is we would keep the admin dollars for that, and they would keep the actual the remaining of the permit dollars, basically. And that would cover their staff, their PERS, their gas, their vehicle, their insurance. So it really is a win-win for our county. We're going to be able to get these permits processed quicker. We're going to have that service where they can get they know for sure somebody will be here once a week. So this is the first step of putting that plan into place. It requires us to have the agreement with Josephine County. And then from there will be other agreements forthcoming, such as agreements with the state, et cetera. But this is, like I said, step one. I did attach for you so you could see the number of permits we go through for the last 3 years, and you can see it's really not that much. I do want to let you know that the IGA before you is considered a draft, because Josephine County they were still reviewing it just to make sure that it met all their needs. But if, like I said, just request the board to approve it so we can move forward with the process and bring forward other agreements as the state agrees to make the transfer.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boyce?
This is just more good news. Much appreciated, great work. I would like to make a motion that the Board of Commissioners approve this IGA agreement with Josephine County.
I will second that.
Further discussion? Commissioner Gold?
Let me just say that I think this is a good solution to a possible big problem, and it will increase the speed of getting homes built. So I think it's a good solution.
It is huge when you can cut that time, even if you do half that time, for the builders, planners, subcontractors, everybody. So,
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
7E, appointing a local public health officer, Ms. Schmelzer.
Yes, our public health administrator is here in case she would like to say something too, but basically statutes require that we have a local public health officer, which basically is a doctor, and Dr. Silver, who is currently the public health officer and has been serving CCH, has agreed to help us until mid-March, so March 15th. So, but the question is, what do we do after that? Or what do we do if Dr. Silver isn't available? So I reached out to Josephine County, and Josephine County agreed to let us use their public health officer at no charge. So this order, would basically solidify our decision that we accept those offers, and then we'll proceed with agreements with Dr. Silver and Josephine County.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have one question. How much would it cost us for Dr. Silver?
Dr. Silver did not give us a price, so we are proceeding under the assumption that he is just helping us out for the next 2 weeks as needed.
Commissioner Boyce?
I just want to give a little shout out to Dr. Silver and his staff. They never turn a veteran away. You know, sometimes if they get paid, well, they get paid, but sometimes it's quite delayed, and yeah, sometimes they just don't worry about that. It's just that's the word around Southern Curry County, and just hats off to them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, I have a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair, to approve this agreement with Josephine County and Dr. Silver at the transition.
It's an order, not an agreement, correct? I just wanted to make sure.
I think you're right on that.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Further discussion?
Unanimously yet again.
Where's your pom-poms?
Director's report, Ms. Schmelzer.
I don't have too much to report because it's been pretty crazy, as you know. We are preparing for the public health move. The public health administrator, Sheree Ward, and I've been very busy talking with the state. Sheree's been on the phone with the state hours a day, trying to get up to speed on all the programs and some of the areas of concern right now that the public has regarding Shigella and coronavirus. So I focus more on the administrative side of moving the public health offices. We have, they're supposed to start working here on the 28th. There is one employee who may not be coming, and then another employee had to give a 2-week notice. But it's effective the 28th is when we should start, which is Friday, we should start providing these services. So there's been a lot of furniture moving. We've received a lot of dented up old equipment, which I believe is what we transferred back in 2013. So I've been working with maintenance on how we get rid of those items, basically, because we have no room to store them. Right now they're in the hallways, they're in the blue room, they're everywhere. We're expecting another load to be delivered this week. So I've talked with Chet from facilities, and the county does have a policy on what you do when you no longer have equipment that you need, and that is, first thing you do is you offer it up to nonprofits. So Chet and I have been working on how to offer that up to them and doing a notice and inviting them to come in and how we're going to get rid of that and move it out and everything. The other thing I've been working on is the org charts, the organizational charts. We need them for the budget, but also to look at our staffing needs, where we need people, You know, we've had some vacancies, we've had some illnesses, and right now it seems like we're just putting out a lot of fires to keep our programs going. So I'm just working on some organizational charts, which I'll bring forward for the next meeting for us to review. And then just to let you know that we did get the RFP responses on the auditor. We had two people actually, two firms, actually submit or respond to the RFP. So we'll be bringing that to you for the next meeting for approval. We're going to select one and then proceed with that. That's all I have.
All right. Commissioner updates. Commissioner Boyce.
Ooh, we're moving right along, aren't we? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to give a quick ODOT report here from Mr. Duvall. You know, what kind of prompted this was the work that was to be done eventually, series of projects between the south end of the Jekyll River Bridge and the California-Oregon border. You know, I think we all have, we've grown very fond of the Oregon Department of Transportation, the work they've done. As emergency manager Dumeyer said, you know, this is the most important part of the highway in Oregon. You know, it just requires a lot of work, as we know, but I think they've just done an incredible job. I'm going to provide this. I won't read it, but of course, but I will provide it to the commissioners. This is right now, as it stands, his office, his staff, their priority list in how that affects Curry County. And there's some good news in here. There's some, some delayed and not so good news. But each time he offers at the end of the project, Huskenauden slide, almost $4 million. As you know, they just confirmed a contract on that. Was not a Curry County construction company, but nonetheless, I think they got a good deal. Here's $3.6 million through Port Orford. And some ADA issues, 1.7, and that's a Coos County project, but you know, that's okay. That's our sister county or close to us. Anyway, I'll provide this with the commission. I'm just generally, Mr. Chair, very happy with his response, his devotion, his staff to Curry County, and what that means for our citizens, what that means for our travel business, what it means for our emergency management, and just access for Curry County. Anyway, he just does, I just want to give him a little shout out here, and we've sent letters in the past. Anyway, I'll have this available to the public. It'll be on my website. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the coronavirus. The president will be speaking at 3 o'clock Western time today. He's appropriated $2.5 billion. He's getting a lot of pushback. That's not near enough, but it is an initial fee. I think you're also aware there's 57 people in the United States that have contracted the virus. We've had no deaths. There's 80,000 people affected worldwide. But, you know, the chances of dying from this disease, if you get it, and as Emergency Management Director Dumeyer said, there's 2 cases in Eureka, which, and we have Sheree Ward here, which I hope that she'll have time to comment if she would like to. But being that close at Eureka, it does get your attention a little bit. I just want the public to understand, our first priority is to really watch out for the safety of our citizens. And I'm just watching what our staff is doing and how they're handling this, the work they're doing with the Oregon Health Authority, the Communicable Disease Center, I got the acronym wrong, and then the National Health Institute. So in the United States, I wouldn't be, you know, if I was going to fly to Washington, D.C., I think everything's going to be fine. But I do want the public to know our people are really watching close, working with the hospital, working with emergency management, and it's just something we're going to have to deal with. The CCD come out yesterday and said, hey, it's not if or when the United States is going to deal at a greater level. We got to watch our kids. We got to watch our older population. It certainly has affected the stock market. I think that's probably going to come back today, although I haven't checked. But there's some eyebrows raising, and the chances of actually dying from this disease is 2 out of 100 if you get it. The one thing that, and Mr. Trigger, you were going to maybe speak a little bit. I don't mean to, I think that was your interest. But those odds are, not good, but they're, again, compared to the normal flu. I think this whole thing will pass. Again, I just want to remind the public that we are really paying attention here and our people, and I'm just very pleased with the level of commitment early on that I think is really important. That's all I have on that. So do we want to kind of break in and do you have anything you wanted to add? I know you've been working overtime, needless to say. That was the sheriff in the background.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Board.
Pull your mic down. You're the one on the
Sheree
right.
Ward, Public Health Administrator for Curry County. Yes, I am up and apprised on the coronavirus. Unfortunately, I've been thrown into, my daughter said, Mom, they threw you to the wolves. Well, guess what? I'm going to come out leading them. At this point in junction, in regards to the coronavirus, we are actually working on the low man boat right now with the hospital infection control unit. The person that I speak with is Mercedes. And she actually is doing a phenomenal job. She runs off the same system as I do as well. And so I'm just going to put a hypothetical out there. Say, for instance, a person were to go to our hospital and say that they were in contact or getting off a cruise ship. They would go into the infection control unit. Mercedes would go ahead and ask some qualifying questions. So basically, they are called PUMs. The person's under monitoring. That person under monitoring would be asked several questions that have been put together from OHA and the CDC as well, and they would actually monitor them to find out qualifying questions in regards to whether or not they meet the, what I want to say, bear with me too, I'm on lack of sleep. Criteria of being put into quarantine. And quarantine, if they were meet certain criteria in regards to that, then they would be considered a person under investigation. A person under investigation is going to be at that level, and just so you know, let me back up a little bit, we also, the hospital has to report to myself, and then we would also report to the state epidemiologist and let them know we have a case here and how do we, kind of proceed. So we're not flying blind here. We definitely have a lot of assistance through that avenue. The other thing with the person under investigation, the person under investigation at that point in juncture would be told by myself or by the state epi, and we would also be working with the health officer in regards to what we have here, and then letting them know that they would have to be quarantined for 14 days, stay inside their home, certain case management that would happen. But understand, I'm not making these decisions on my own, and neither is the hospital. The state is really involved in this, along with the CDC. So this criteria is where we are at this juncture. So there is a lot of communications happening. I do encourage, if the public does feel like that, that they have been in a certain region, you contact your primary care provider. And we are sending out health alert network systems along with the state. The state is helping us get that information out to the primary care providers almost on a daily basis. So unfortunately, what's happening is as they learn more, everything is changing. Yes. So if you want more and accurate information in regards to how it's progressing, just go to Oregon.gov, and that's the Oregon Health Authority page, and they are updating any numbers and persons under investigation and people under monitoring. I can tell you there are 0 cases in Oregon. So it's just, and there are some that may have come in and they had 2, but may have been under monitoring. There were negative results. So we do not have any cases in Oregon at this time.
I just have a couple of quick questions. Number one, do we have the testing kits available to see if they are actually infected with coronavirus?
So you're asking some really good questions, and let me tell you, when it came to the Shigella outbreak last week, we had outdated kits. Mm-hmm. So the state is working with us in regards to providing that level I'm not sure where the hospital's at, so that's what we're working on right now, so bear with me. We are doing everything. So anything that happens right now, if, say, for instance, one were to present to me right now, I'd be on the phone with the state epi saying, what do I need? Send it to me, and they get it to me, and we get them monitored and stuff. So that is actually initially what happened last week with this outbreak. As you know, we requested the state to come in and help. Lack of resources. I'm the only person in CD at the moment, so I needed some assistance regards to that outbreak. They were able to provide us with the kits. I have ordering supplies, and we actually have now drop-offs and stuff. So I'm actually even having stool samples for like outbreaks, for the Shigella and things like that in-house that unfortunately I have to collect and then ship off to the lab. But I'm still getting up and going on the coronavirus and the needs that we have. But if we were to need them, they can be here just like that. So we just realize that right now. So,
One second little question, and I don't know whether you could even answer this. Sutter Coast, just over the border, because I've heard things about Del Norte possibly having some problems. Del Norte for us folks here. But do you know whether they have...
I have not,
wherewithal?
and up front, I have not corresponded regards to Del Norte County at the moment, other than just the press release that I have seen. It's just been one fire after another. So
Well, I mean, we're just like on top of each other, Fred Meyer and all that stuff.
Exactly. So I will definitely reach out to them and find out where we stand on that. But it's also in correspondence with emergency management. I do know the emergency manager down there in Del Norte County, Kimmy Scott, very well. It's just kind of ironing out all those roles and responsibilities along with taking on public health. And just know that, and I'm going to be up front on this one, we are starting off ground floor zero here at the county.
Oh,
with
you're doing an
our
amazing
supplies.
job considering
So
where you're starting.
under the
me.
circumstances, what I had at the contractors, subcontractors, we don't have here in-house. So we're doing the best that we can with what we have, and we're going to continue.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out some questions because...
I gotcha. And the safety of the community is really a top priority for me, always has been, and I take that very seriously.
Commissioner Boyce?
You didn't get to ask anything. You put on the county website the CDC and the Oregon Health Authority guidelines. That's really basic, good stuff. If people have questions, basically it says, hey, double wash your hands. There's some new techniques that we're learning about different soaps, and we were just discussing early, and just something that simple. And then if you have related supplies, you might be able to help your neighbors down the road. I don't think it'll come to that, but sure, it could.
Partnerships and networking with your partners, it's knowing them, and I'm a firm believer about collaboration, always have, always will be. We need each other in emergencies, no matter how it handles. So I just ask that the public and our partners be patient and just know that I'm going to be back out there with them, hopefully here soon. But we have to get through this transition as smooth as possible, as much as we can.
And we're going to have a patient sheriff if you don't get dinner on the table, right?
He's been a trooper, so I've been pretty exhausted, and even my four-legged creatures are suffering right now, but now he has to take care of them. So
Thank you, Ms. Ward.
Thank you. Have a good day.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll complete here real quick.
You're going to have him speak as well.
I don't know if you... Mr. Trickett, did you want to speak today or next week, or I think we've covered it enough, but it's up to you. It's your...
I think it might be useful if you just use 3 minutes to talk about some of the
Okay.
virus itself.
Thank you.
If any of you have any interest in my background, residents here in Curry County, any of that, I'm happy to, but I'd really like to just kind of jump right into this. My name's David Joseph Trickett. I have resided here for the past 5 years now, came here in 2014. COVID-19 it was initially referred to as novel coronavirus, literally because it was new. And then they officially called it, or termed it, the WHO termed it COVID-19. I don't know the etymology for that. I'm told they had to have, I've read that they had a number of sessions to discuss that. Anyway, it's also now being referred to as SARS-2. SARS is a term, severe acute respiratory syndrome. You may recall that they had an outbreak of that in 2003. This originated in China, specifically Wuhan, late 2019. Wuhan is a city of 11 million people. The Chinese originally covered it up, basically, denied its existence. One of the doctors who attempted to get the word out is 34. He's dead now. He was in the hospital for about 4 weeks before it finally killed him. So he was sort of lauded as a martyr by the populace there. This is a coronavirus. This is named for the characteristic fringe, crown, or halo. It's actually from a Greek term, corona, referring to crown, and referring to the appearance of the virus. Other coronaviruses are the common cold, SARS, which is, again, severe acute respiratory syndrome, MERS, which is Middle East respiratory syndrome, much more fatal, harder to get, not a problem. And typically these cause upper respiratory infections. There are at least 7 strains of the human type, or types that afflict humans. Let's see. So the basic characteristics of the expression of the disease, and I'm going to talk about the situation itself: fever, cough, shortness of breath, acute respiratory syndrome, distress syndrome, I should say, viral pneumonia, cardiac edema, organ shutdown, cytokine storms. Very serious complication rate. 15% of the cases are going to pneumonia. Up to 5% require intensive care. It's much more deadly, as Commissioner Boyce had mentioned, than the flu. Basically, the case fatality rate is between 2 to 3%.
So less deadly, I'm sorry.
No, more deadly. Much more deadly than flu. Flu's typically 0.1%. This thing is killing 2%, 2 to 3%.
Yeah, I heard the opposite. I might have that incorrect.
Well, and again, that's a really good point. And this is one of the reasons I'm up here concerned about this, because watching this, I've been watching this since early January, frankly. This is one of my little hobbies. There's a number of different things I just pay attention to in the world in general. One of the things that's very disturbing about this, and again, a real reason for coming up here, is this has been underestimated. It's been underplayed. CDC spent, and WHO spent basically most of last month pushing that narrative. It's bad, but it's not as bad as the flu. We have up to 80,000 Americans die every year by flu. So far, a month ago, they were talking about the Chinese data, which is also obviously vastly understated. They've been, frankly, lying about how bad this thing is, and I can refer to why. We could very quickly hunt up the information for that. But they spent a solid month basically saying it's only killed X amount of people, while they knew that the fatality rate was 2%. Flu is 0.1%. So that's an order of magnitude times 2. It's 20 times worse. If you have a situation where the hospitals, the healthcare system are overwhelmed, it jumps up to 50 times, or 5%. So this thing is no joke, and I'll go into some additional implications, bases for that particular statement. So it has a higher case fatality rate. That's the first thing. China, Vietnam, Thailand, South Korea, Singapore. Singapore is doing very well, by the way, in controlling it. Iran, Italy, Austria, Croatia, US, Brazil, France, Japan, Greece. That was just a quick assessment of this morning. They've added Greece, Croatia, and Austria over the past 48 hours. So it's very contagious. I don't know if you're familiar with the term R0, R with a little 0 there, but that's a measure of contagiousness, I should say. Measles is 12 to 18, influenza 2 to 4. This thing is estimated at about 6.7. Mumps 4 to 12. Now, a quick way to understand that is assume someone who's infected with it walks through a room with 10 people, 6 people get it. If one of us had it during this meeting, there's a good chance 10 of us would get it, if they'd had any time to sit here. It spreads asymptotically. That's huge. The technical term for this, I believe, is prodromal. But what we're referring to is probably more understood as sort of an incubation rate. So you get it, you don't have any symptoms for up to 28 days. Now that's an outlier. I'm running out of time, aren't I?
Yeah.
So it spreads with, you can get this from other people without them showing symptoms, droplets, aerosols, surfaces for days. No natural immunity, and there's probably another 7 or 8 elements of this that I could bring up. So my recommendation is that the commissioners at next meeting put this on the agenda and discuss what the county should be doing to prepare for this. Again, I think I'm out of time, but I could give you some recommendations right now just to give you an idea of the flavor of what I'm talking about. I did send an email about a month ago to Ms. Ward, I don't know if you remember that, just detailing some of the obvious things that I think that we should be doing.
Why don't you just forward that email to us as well?
Well, I'd have to update it. If you're asking me to give you an updated set of recommendations, I'd be happy to do it.
Maybe get them to Ms. Schmelzer and she can get them to us.
Okay. Can I, you don't want me to CC you, just send them to her?
Just send them to Ms. Schmelzer and she
Okay.
can get them to us, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Did you have anything else for your comments?
I'd just like to watch the next week or so before we decide to have a workshop, but it's subject to board approval though. I don't think we need one next Wednesday. You know, there's a lot of work towards vaccines. It may be a few months, probably will be a few months, but I don't want to, no need to panic, but there is a need to just watch what's going on in China and around the world, 37 countries, but we're doing that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
I've been spending a lot of time getting our volunteer presentations together, and so far it's blossomed to a little over 2 pages. So,
All right.
But I'm going to keep it succinct.
Okay, for me, I just want to comment on our public health, let the county know, you know, what's happened here. As of now, we have had to take back public health, and we will be taking back, in all likelihood, mental health as well. The arrangement that was made with CCH back in 2012 has been vacated, for lack of further language on it. I'll just say it's been vacated. And this, the Commissioner's Office, Ms. Schmelzer, I don't have words for what you're being put through right now. The amount of work and hours that you are going through right now, to have to deal with what you're dealing with to put this together, I don't have words to say thank you enough. And this entire board feels the same way, and I just want our citizens to know you're doing a great job, and it is well appreciated. Ms. Ward, for you to step in and do this, again, much appreciation. This is something that's just been thrown on our laps, and we were given basically a few weeks to get this taken care of, and staff has stepped up immeasurably to get this handled, and we've had coordination with other offices for office space, for employees that aren't in maintenance to help the maintenance departments. Everyone in the county is working together to get this handled, and I just want to say again thank you to everyone for what they are doing. I do want to just briefly touch on one other thing. Congressman DeFazio sent us an email saying that he's acquired another $11.7 million for the ports in Oregon. On a personal note, I appreciate that from him. I was a little saddened to see that Coos Bay Port got $8 million, and Gold Beach Rogue River only got $247,000. So I'm just a little disappointed in the disparity of the amount of funds that Coos Bay is getting versus what Gold Beach is getting, and for the amount of rock and sediment that we have in the mouth of this river right now, and the issues that we're dealing with in our tourism and the lifeblood of this county, to not get this better handled. I'm just a little disappointed in that, and I will hopefully keep beating that drum in Washington next week. So With that being said, Commissioner Boyce?
If I can, Mr. Chair, quickly add, we have a workshop today with court-appointed special advocates, CASA, and if the public wants to know, I would tune in for that. That's a very important program to our communities. On the 4th, I will give an offshore wind, Southern Oregon Workforce Investment, and an AOCC report. That's all I have. Oh, I want to thank Matt Hall for the newspapers. He is so faithful to bring those and give them free. Thank you, Mr. Hall. That's all I have.
All right, so with that, my comments are finished. At this time, we're going to take a 15-minute recess and come back at 10:30 for executive session to deal with 1926602A, consider employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. And we've added 2F, litigation likely to be filed. So we will be back at 10:30. We're in recess. We're at this time going to recess this meeting and go into executive session. Upon finishing executive session, we will resume this meeting. So we are in recess. Okay, I'm ready. I need to play anything. We are back in session. Oh, wait a minute. We're not in session yet. We are back in session. It is 11:29 on February 26, 2020, and staff is to proceed as directed from executive session. Council Huddle, do you have something further?
Just wondering if I could be excused from the workshop. Sorry.
I would say that's fine.
I'm going to bring up kind of a question. At that workshop, I know I'm personally going to want to know, there's going to be a transition in the county. How is that going to take place? I don't know whether you're going to be an integral part of that.
How long do we think that workshop is going to be today? I just asked because last week we had an extremely long workshop that took up a bunch of time. I wasn't expecting that.
So I think that those questions, Commissioner Gold, that I could probably answer those or help with those.
Okay.
So and if there is something that we need counsel for, we can always run and get them or take a break.
Thank you.
We're not making decisions in the workshop, so
Yeah.
I think we can just update counsel after.
Thanks very
30,
much.
45 minutes, I would think.
Okay. All right, with that, anything further? This meeting is adjourned.